Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. This is going to be a good one here. Before I bring on my guest, I just want to say I've known this guy a long time. He broadcasts down the dial. He now broadcasts into me on this device I have on Facebook as NFM Lending, and he's also my LinkedIn friend. And he's a sports guy at heart, I guess, who went another direction. I'm still here trying to make it, Greg Sher, trying to make it in the media business, merging WNST and Baltimore Positive. Dude, it is great to have you on. I don't even know how this happened, and many folks may be shocked to know that we're like actually friendly and chummy in the real world 25 years later. But how the heck are you? How's your family, man?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you asking. It's always good to see you. You were always the standard. When I was on BAL, everybody talked about Nestor and what he was doing.
Oh, no. Come on. We're not going down that lane, are we?
No, at BAL, you were feared. You really were.
They didn't like me. I mean, they didn't like me.
I'm not sure about that. I think that you came in unconventionally, and they didn't quite know what to make of you. You had a lot of strong opinions, a lot of ideas, a lot of great, deep relationships, and you could always get to the source of the story quicker than most. And I don't think that makes anybody feel comfortable.
But everybody lies now to the point where I somewhat don't even ask them questions. You know what I mean? Like, if I know you're not going to give me a square answer, there used to be sort of a thing in journalism where you'd be like, I got to ask the question. I got to ask it. And then you take their answer and you write it down and you put it out. And then that answer becomes the lie you then fight with, knowing the truth.
But let's be honest. Let's be honest.
Go ahead.
You make your living off of the relationships that you have, the real relationships, the athletes, the coaches, and they give you the real story. You don't go necessarily forward with their names, but a lot of what you do and a lot of what great broadcasters do comes from the great relationships that they build, breaking stories, being in the know, and such. You agree? Disagree?
I agree wholeheartedly, but I also think we're in a different era, right? Like, and this, look, Greg, this could get deeper than this, inspiring Baltimore Positive and why I'm moving from sports into something. First off, I turned 52 this month, so I'm getting a little older. I've seen what the Orioles have begat over 30 years. I've seen sports, the big lie of sports, and also what sports gives. The morning after we win a Super Bowl and there's a parade, all of those, the blood, the sweat, the tears, and the Herbie Belgrade crab cakes and the 13 years of not having a team, that all matters. Then when the Orioles are not a good civic partner, and they haven't been for a long time, and emptying out the city, and now we're at the end of the lease, I am fascinated to see how we move forward at this point in our lives. Greg, we just got done beating a team we can't even say their last name anymore, right? And that used to mean something. Baltimore versus Washington meant something. And as I go back into the Wayback Machine, as I did last week, talking to Tom Lavero and Marty Conway and John Feinstein, amongst others, that the way Dan Snyder and Peter Angelos have run the thing, it's really changed the way the cities respond to sports. Look at D.C. They've had a Stanley Cup parade. They've had a Nationals parade, and it's still not really a sports town, right? It's still probably a Redskins town if they could ever figure it out. And Baltimore was an Orioles town for you, your dad, my dad, me, us, all of our memories. And now that feels distant, and it's a Ravens town. It's amazing how much it changes during the course of, 25 years ago, you and I doing sports radio, and to where I am now, where, like, if all I did was sports radio, I wouldn't be able to pay my bills.
Yeah, I know that's right. And makes me think back when you asked me to jump on here with you, I started thinking back to the caravan that I was on after the 2000 Super Bowl. What an epic run that was. And after a couple of nights of doing all throughout the morning radio on BAL, I think the night they won the Super Bowl, I think I was on till 4 or 5. Jeff Beauchamp, the program director, said, just go as long as you want. And I think we were taking calls up till 5 a.m. 3 or 4 days later, I was on a caravan with Dwayne Starks and Chris McAllister. Man, I wish I had taken that in a little bit more,
Well, Well, when
because
did you work at BAL? Okay, Greg Sher is here, and tell everybody what you're doing now. Bring everybody up to speed because, I mean, we have a lot of mutual people in our lives, and I know you'll be sharing this, and people will be coming to the new Baltimore Positives, which is one of the things I want them to do and find sort of a new world of conversations. But bring everybody up to speed because, like, you help people all day, and I see you still broadcasting and doing what you do for a living, right?
yeah. So you asked me, the first question was, I was at BAL from, I think, 1990. I became the sports director, took over for Josh Lewin in like 97, maybe 96. And my run there was short. I was not prepared. I didn't prepare, and I was replaced and made a part-time guy by BAL quickly, which was the right move. Disappointing, but a very helpful moment in my life that helped me kind of become the person that I am today. But I would get into the mortgage business sort of by default because I went from being a full-time sports director to, hey, here's a couple of slots on the weekends for you if you want them. If not, here's the door. So I said, you know what, I'll stick around. I'll have a little humility here. And a friend introduced me to the mortgage business, and it's been 23 years, 23 and counting. I owned a company.
It's crazy, dude. I think of you as a sports guy.
I hear you. Well, you know what? In my heart of hearts, I mean, obviously I'm a sports guy. I grew up in a broadcasting family. My father, Richard, was on WJZ for 37 years. He co-hosted a show with Oprah. I mean, you know, that's, you know, I grew up going to Ron Shapiro's house when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. He had these parties, you know, mingling with Ken Singleton and Brooks Robinson and Jim Palmer.
And Singleton wanted to be a broadcaster. There's the guy that played baseball. We have him on all the time, right? So you wanted to be a broadcaster when you were 12?
No, but I paid close attention to what my dad was doing. You know, in those days, he was dragging me to Jay-Z all the time. And I volunteered. I loved it. I was so fascinated by green screens and by sitting around in the audience and shows and just the whole dynamic and interviewing people.
Man, Marty Bass gave you the weather before he gave it to me. Gosh, man. So did Turk, right?
Yep,
absolutely.
I knew it. Bob Turk. Yeah, all those guys. So, you know, I kind of
Alan Jerry, right? You right? Literally.
Of course, yeah. Jerry Turner, Al Sanders, sure. You know, Randy Blair, Klaus Wagner.
You know, I tried out in 1988.
I saw the tape.
So you could be a sports guy, right? I mean, Chris Ely won. Don Moeller lost, but broadcast. He was on one. I watched Don Moeller broadcast at East Point Mall. Literally, I was on the big TV in the TV store, and but you know, I wanted that gig, and when I went in, I give Buren a hard time because, you know, so when Moeller went in for his broadcast, he got Jerry Turner. You know what I mean? Like when other people, Ely went in, he got, you know, he got Al. You know, I had Buren. You know, I mean, you know, so I give Buren a hard time all the time that I didn't get to take a picture with Al and Jerry. So I think I got a picture with your dad. I don't have any pictures with Oprah though. I never met Oprah. So and you like know Oprah, right?
Sure. I mean, I don't. I think the last time I saw her was my dad was FaceTiming her from my house 4 months ago when I said hello. But they
like a kid. I mean, you were a kid, right?
I was a kid, yeah. So
man.
she went to my bar mitzvah even, and you know, gave me my first Walkman. She gave me $100 bill for my bar mitzvah. I remember succinctly. Back to Ron Shapiro.
What'd you do with it? Did you invest it?
I did not, but I wish I had bought some Apple with it now in hindsight.
If
Apple was even around. So now to fast forward to now, I'm in the mortgage business. So I had a mortgage company that I owned, and I rolled it up under a larger Baltimore company during the financial crisis, and I've been there ever since. So been in that game for a long time. So getting sort of how it correlates to the video stuff that I'm doing on nfmtv.com, Nancy Frank Mary, nfmtv.com is about 4 or 5 years ago. I saw an opportunity to kind of merge my love for video with my knowledge of the mortgage business. And I said, let's build a studio. Let's interview people that are making news. Let's interview top producers.
And you built it right on 33rd Street. I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's great, man. Let's build it right there. Right?
Yeah, so we built it, and we're interviewing people all the time. When COVID first hit, we had on the former FHA Commissioner David Stevens. So we're trying to get some newsmakers on, and so that's how I kind of merged the two lanes into my true love, which is broadcasting.
Well, I guess my true love's been media and really Baltimore and sports. And at this point in my career, I'm trying to figure out whether the Orioles are going to stick around. When COVID is over, who is going to find it palatable to give Daniel Snyder or whomever owns the Washington football team $500 for that experience that I had on Sunday? And I got to park in Platinum A because there was nobody there. Where are you with sports, Greg? I mean, you were a kid dreaming of doing it, growing up doing it. I collected baseball cards. I delivered the Dundalk Eagle. I worked at the paper when I was 15, and I was absolutely smitten with news. I love to read, I love to write, and I love sports. Like sports was in the middle of all of it, and that was sort of the draw. That was sort of the drug for me. And now that I'm 52, I still love sports. I'm just wondering whether sports loves any of us back.
Well, I think it's different as a broadcaster, right? I don't think I view things through the same lens as others. A broadcaster at heart, I am. First of all, when I grew up, and I'll get back to that in a minute, I used to go to every opening day. I used to sneak a radio under my pillow at night and listen to Chuck Thompson and Bill O'Donnell religiously every single night. Ain't the beer cold? And I mean, that's when I fell in love. And baseball was so different then. But
it was better when Ekman was in there drunk, I think. But
he was awesome.
Just an opinion. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Right. No,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, grandmother Ripken, you're gone. Tom Marr. I mean, there've been some great broadcasters here.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Yeah. Get out of here. Get out of here. Gone. But a couple of strikes and then being in a few locker rooms, I had a couple of run-ins with some guys. One of them was a childhood hero of mine, Eddie Murray, who was really rude to me one day. I never really had a relationship with him because I was just an older broadcaster. He didn't know my Baltimore connections or anything like that. Although I approached him one day and told him, who I was in the locker room. I was in Dallas. He was playing for the Indians. I approached him and he was just not nice. It kind of broke my heart a little bit, honestly. And I think that when you have to prepare to the degree that you have to as a broadcaster, and you've got to be in locker rooms and you got to sit around for an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes just to get a canned quote, you just sort of, you add it all up, and I'm a little jaded in that way. So I've leaned now more towards the things I'm most passionate about when it comes to sports: horse racing and the NFL. Those are the two things that I love the most. Those are the two brands that I believe in the most. And I'm still very passionate about it. It still gives back to me. Play a lot of fantasy football and things like that. Just had a recent streak of 23 straight Kentucky Derbies snapped by COVID. So I'm not actually going to consider it a break.
I got a picture with you at about 5 of them, I think.
Yeah, so that's a great time, right? So, I mean, as far as what it's doing for me, Nestor, in order to really know baseball, as you know, you've got to read a lot of papers. You've got to do a lot of research. It takes a lot of bandwidth. And if you're not a full-time broadcaster, it's really hard to keep up in that way. So for me, I think I look at it a little differently. As I've gotten older, and I'll be 50 in November, I just like what I like. When I'm not with my 2 boys or my wife or traveling for business, those are the 2 things that I give all of me to, and they give a lot back to me. And I love the NFL still. Think it's great. What a great product. And I feel the same way about horse racing, having grown up 1.5 miles from Pimlico in Mount Washington.
Greg Sher is here. He is at NFM Lending. And I don't want to tell you what I thought NFM stood for. So, I mean, I'm glad. Nancy, Frank, Mary is what you gave me?
Yeah. What would you say? Tell me. And there's an F in there. I'm a little afraid to ask.
Never F in mine. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
But Greg is here, and Greg was at BAL a long time ago. You were telling a story about being on the Caravan with the Ravens after they won the Super Bowl and that feeling. And I've told this story a couple times, but I want to share it with you because I think you'd have some understanding. And I've got the video now. Mike Flynn, the morning after we won the parade on Tuesday, I had flown back to Philly. I had to do radio up in Philly at NFL Films. Baldinger was on my flight. Matt Millen was on my flight. I was sideways because I'd been up all night. I broadcast. I came back to sleep, and the next day we were going to go to the barn and have the celebration. And in those days, you couldn't text anybody. You had to, call. There was no email. You had to call and get the person on the line and say, will you come tonight? Or after the tone, leave a message, beep, So I'm like, I got to get guessed. Mulatalo was confirmed because he said if we won the Super Bowl, he was going to come out and do the haka, right? So I knew I had him, but I'm like, we're only going to win one Super Bowl. Little did I know we'd win two. But I said, all right, I got to get guessed. And I was like coming down with a little something. I probably would have been COVID tested in the modern era. And I went down to the parking lot, had no intention of sitting through the parade, didn't want to mess with the traffic. All I wanted to do was walk out with 3 or 4 guys looking at me and being like, I will be there tonight. So I show up in the morning, and Flynn, Falau, Kim Herring, Kyle Richardson, I think those were the guys that came then, and Mulatalo. Those were the guys I fished in the morning, and I'm like, will you come? They said yes. And Billick's like, are you going to ride in the parade? And I'm like, I'm not even dressed. I'm not. Yeah, he's like, oh, come on, you're one parade. Somebody put him in. Flynn, put him up on the float. So next thing you know, I'm up on the Humvee, and they all had the little cameras, right? The little video cameras. So Flynn's like, good deal. You come up. Your media. You video our ride. So I put the thing on, and I got my eyeglass case. It was about this big, little webcam, and it was raining, as you remember. And I videotaped the whole thing, okay? Flynn's like, the battery's charged. It's all good. Just video it. We'll have it forever. That was January 30th, 2001, all right? So where were you then? You were working for BAL, having a good time, caravanning, right? Literally.
Yeah, yep.
Where were you during the parade?
I was on one of the Humvees with Dwayne Starks and Chris McAllister.
You're in the video then at some point.
I would love to see that.
So tell everybody, was that the most amazing thing you've ever done? I mean, you have children, wife, your parents are alive. Like, of all the things you've ever done in your life, I literally would put that. It's in the top 5, and only because my wife and the birth of my, some things like that. It would anger them if they weren't won, right? But the first Super Bowl parade, I treasure that like against everything that's ever happened, because it was kind of a miracle, right? It was a miracle we ever got the team, kind of, sort of, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, I treasured a lot of the relationships that I had with a lot of the guys that played on that team and some others. That's what I really like when I think back, and some of these guys weren't on the Super Bowl team, but sitting at Eric Rett's house playing chess with him and Priest Holmes, having Michael Jackson come play softball with me on my softball team on Sunday. Nobody could believe he couldn't hit a softball. He would hit a little number back to the mound, but he was so fast he would make it to first, and they'd be like, how did Greg get him to come out?
He was such a good guy, Michael Jackson, wasn't he?
Huh?
Michael was such a good guy.
He was a great guy.
The Thriller, man. He came down in bowl, and Buren was there that night. Buren did a league night from Pinland and Dundalk. I got video of this. And he came in, and he didn't have bowling shoes, and he had never seen a duck pin ball. And he picked up the ball, and Buren's rolling tape on it, and the first ball he picked up, he rolled a strike. Like, like Michael Jackson, a true athlete, right?
He was great. Also got real close with Tony Jones, hung out with him a lot. We used to drive around listening to music. Greg Montgomery, the punter.
The late great.
He's a great guy. We once went out and partied so hard. My only memory of it is sitting in Federal Hill with my head between my legs, puking my guts out. That guy could party hard. I was in over my head. Which,
yep. That's why I never went out with Monty. I went out with Steve Everett once, and that was the end of that. That's all I needed to know. But the parade,
back to your question, back to your answer.
Parade memory, because like to me that was the most spectacular thing I ever experienced, and I have like a funny after story about that tape that has led me on a 2-decade pursuit. But do you remember that? Do you have pictures of yourself that day?
I don't. I wish I did, man. I wish I did. I don't. I was, I was in my 3rd or 4th year at BAL. I think I was probably flustered. At BAL, they threw a lot of deadlines at you. There was a lot of pressure. I think I was probably just trying to make sure that, I had fresh batteries in my recorder. Like I said, I don't think I didn't take it.
It wasn't as much fun for you as it was for me, is what you're saying.
No question. No, and you were tight with Brian Billick. I mean, you had such great relationships. The prince of it all, perhaps my best memory is the relationship I had with Kevin Byrne. And I know you're probably fond of Kevin too. Just such a sweetheart of a man. And he was just always so good to me. And that's really what I take away from that year is my relationship with him and being happy for him. being happy for Art Modell, being happy for just the way they were chastised and criticized for leaving Cleveland. And I was just so, yeah, there you go.
There
Art.
you go. See, I keep Art on the table. This is the hat that came off of Ogden's head up at the Paramount. I keep this behind me. The only
That's
two
awesome.
little sort of things. I don't have any pictures on the wall around here. I put them up on the website, but Art was awesome. So I
have a good Art Modell story.
Go ahead, give me it. I want to hear it.
So I told you I've been at 23 straight Kentucky Derbies up until this year. So I don't know, 15 years ago, I don't know how many years ago it was. It was the year Menifee, I think, came in second. You can look it up if you want. But back then I was still finding my way around Churchill Downs, which is an enormous place. It takes a little while to figure your way around. But I had snuck basically into Millionaire's Row without knowing it was Millionaire's Row. This is an exclusive suite area. A lot of money's paid to be in those suites, and some very distinguished people are in there. I didn't realize this at the time, but I and another friend of mine kind of weaseled our way into this suite, and this is unbelievable.
I'm not going to outsmole him, but go ahead.
Of all the suites I could have busted into, I go in there just as the horses are loading in the gate, and I walk in, go over to the suite. There's probably 25 people that actually belong in the suite, and then there's this little kid in there who snuck his way in. I'm leaning over, and all of a sudden I see David Modell, and I see Art, and a security guard comes up to me and says, son, are you supposed to be in here? Art Modell turns around. He goes, what the hell are you doing here? I said, I don't know. I got lost. He goes, come over here with me. Let's watch this together on the monitor. So I ended up watching the Kentucky Derby with Art. We had the exact same horse, who I think came in second in the race. And that was a real thrill, but it kind of tells you who Art was. He was just an everyday man. He wasn't stuck up or high on his horse at all. He was just a regular, funny, hilarious, sweet dude. And that was a really cool moment for me to be in to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But for Art, in only a way Art can, instantly made me feel comfortable.
Art gave me some of the best advice ever really early on, before I even knew him. Before, I don't think he could even trust me, but he liked me. And he said, young man, never be afraid to write the truth, because if you lie to them, they'll never believe a word you say. Write whatever you want, write the truth. And I said, okay, and that was always his message to me was, report the truth, and 30 years later, you might still have a career. Greg Sher is here. He's at NFM Lending. He once was at WBAL. He is always on my Facebook page and my LinkedIn and in my life, and through friendships and links with all sorts of people all throughout Baltimore as my hair grows during the pandemic. But I want to go back to the parade story, and then I want to get caught up to modern era in this because of how much it used to mean and what it meant to me. So that day I hold the camera and I take the tape, and I say to Flynn, do you want me to take the tape? I'll make a copy. No, I'll send you a copy. 2 months later, I'm in Fort Lauderdale for baseball spring training, and he lived in Deerfield Beach. So did Kyle Richardson. We went to a hockey game with my son that night, a Florida Panthers game, and I went to Flynn's house, and, this is a bachelor guy who had just won the Super Bowl in Florida on a 6th floor, like, near a bunch of bars. There's nothing in the place, but there was a television and the little glass IKEA thing that the TV sits on, and the tapes were there. And I said, is that the Super Bowl tape? He's like, yeah. I picked it up and I held it in my hand. That was March 10th of 2001 that I held that tape, and I set it down, and it was never heard from again. Okay. So Flynn plays 5 more years for the team, and I hit him about the tape. It doesn't have the tape. Flynn leaves the team, and we stay friends, and we're always in contact with the Def Leppard concerts. At some point, he admits to me around 2008 or 9 that he's lost the tape. So this goes on. He said, maybe my parents have it at their house in Springfield. So my wife gets cancer in 14. Sometime in like 11 or 12, he started doing sports radio up in Boston, right? So he was a recurring figure. In 14, when I changed my whole life and just, brought the Oprah show in for me, and it's just me doing radio, he became a recurring figure who comes on 5-6 times a year. Every month or two, Flynn shows up around here, and I just beat him up mercilessly in 14, in 15, 16, 17, 18. He did the Give a Spit Day at Fenway Park with my wife after she survived the first time when we did 30 ballparks in Boston. We spent the whole day together, and all I did was just destroy him about losing the freaking Super Bowl parade tape, right? So I had him on at the beginning of COVID. Do you keep up with Flynn? Do you know what he does, like what his kid is about? His kid is a Broadway star. His kid was the lead in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory on Broadway 2 years ago.
Wow.
His kid just got the lead in Mrs. Doubtfire on Broadway. They went out to Seattle for a month in January and like worked the show up, you know, with a pre-Broadway opening. They went back to New York. He did one night on Tuesday night, and the world shut down on Thursday, okay? So he's in New York. I call him because he's got this incredible story about him and his son and getting shut down in New York and having to go back to Boston. And so he comes on, and I beat him up because it's like part of our shtick. Flynn, you found the Super Bowl tape yet? No. You lost it. Yeah, I lost it, man. So he does the whole routine, and when we get off the phone, he texts me back. He's like, call me. I got to tell you something. He's like, I found the tape. I didn't want to tell you, but I found the tape, and I'm FedExing it to you. You need to handle it. Dude, he found the tape, and he mailed it to me first week of June. Hair on the back. It made the hair stand up, dude. Like, so I get the tape, and I've waited 19 years for the tape. Shout out to Greg Landry and Towson Tapes and Blue Rock. It's one of those little tapes that you cannot – nobody has the equipment. So Greg has the equipment. He digitizes it, brings it to me the next day, right? Like I have it in Dropbox. And I said to my wife, I'm going to shut the door and experience this. I'm going to cry. I'm going to be a mess. I put the tape on. I start watching it. And we turn the corner, and I'm holding the camera, and everything washed away, Greg. The water started washing down the front of the camera. And everything on Pratt Street was a blur for 2 blocks. I'm like, oh my God, 19 years I waited for this tape, and it's trashed. Like, dude, we turned the corner when we were, because I'm right by my house. You know where I live. So the warehouse, we turned the corner off of wherever 395, right? So I guess Howard Street. We made the right at the convention center, and like an act of God, Flynn's like, the camera looks a little dirty, and he like does this thing to it, and it was like when the Wicked Witch
parting of the Red Sea, huh?
That was, it was like Wizard of Oz when it went from like black and white to color. And the first thing I saw on the camera was Eddie Frankovic, who has covered hockey for me for 20 years, and he's wearing the Flying B, and he's like, Nestor! And it's like a 20-year-old version of both of us, you know? I'm all like chipper and 30-something. He's all chipper and 30. Like, and from there, it's straight magic, dude. So I have not put the whole tape up. It is an hour and 10 minutes. Dilfer's on it. David Nobel's on it.
I want to see it.
So really, Peter Boulware and his wife have hit me. So I have a piece of it to share with you through, and I don't know where Flynn found it. He's got to give me the story of what the hell happened. He hadn't told me that story yet. And he hasn't watched it yet, by the way. So
you're going to put it up on your new beautiful site that you're working on?
I think I'm going to put it up on my new. How dare you promote Baltimore Positive like that, Greg Sher? Shameless. Tell everybody how to get in touch with you and what you do with lending at NFM.
Well, I haven't originated a loan forever. I'm in business development. I help the company grow. So as far as how you can reach me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. You know, just I'm hoping people don't trash me. I'm hoping people don't trash me too bad, because I was I think I was voted worst reason to listen to Baltimore radio at one time. So maybe
you want me to open up my hate mail into 2020 to make you feel better about selling mortgages?
No, I'm fine with it. It's all, you know what? I don't have any regrets, but yeah, no, you've overcome so much. You've been crushed by plenty of people, but everyone's got these opinions, you know. So it is what it is.
My opinion is you have the best Zoom background on the history of Zoom backgrounds there. So, I
I
mean,
appreciate that.
and I judge it like I can see the construction underway of the little silos on first base and third base when they took out the store at the top of the hill there. And I see the school buses and wondering whether one of them was mine, headed back to Colgate with my safety badge on or whatnot. Greg
Hey.
Sher is here. He did sports at BAL for a long time. I invited him on just literally to talk about the world and maybe get into some COVID and maybe get into sports and where this thing's headed. I guess the thing began with how much you and I both love sports, how much both of you and I love Baltimore sports and broadcasting and media. And, you know, I called into People Are Talking one time to your dad back in the day, and your dad got mad at me because I was defending Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know that I've ever told your dad that story, but it's true. He threw me off. But you know, like we go back into this, and being in Rowjohn on Sunday and being one of 100 people there and parking in Platinum A. I got to tell you what, man, the miso salmon that they served was, thank you, Dan Snyder. Thank you. But being there and seeing the juxtaposition of what the Ravens and the team formerly known as, we can't even say their name anymore, what they used to be and what they are, and what the Orioles used to be and what they are, and what sports used to be and what it's going to have to be financially moving forward, and where Peter Angelos is eating pudding right now and his kid lives in Nashville where they're looking to get a team. There's all of this stuff that happens that time changes everything, right?
It
like
does.
time, just give it some time and things will change. I don't know how accepting this community is going to be about what we're going to have to pony up to keep baseball and football over the next 25 years.
There's a lot. You just went over a lot. There's a lot there. So I think sports, obviously, yeah, it is changing, but I think what's going to be the catalyst, and this is very forward thinking, it may or may not be the case, but I think that the networks have a lot to worry about. I think that the future of sports is going to be twofold. It's going to be, and this could be 5 years, 10 years, but I think it's going to be all about in-game betting, DraftKings, FanDuel, all these people seeing this opportunity right now to make up for lost revenue in states.
To make it a horse race.
Huh?
To make it a horse race.
Sure. That's a fine analogy. But I mean, you literally could have Lamar Jackson under center and you'll see a prop bet. You know, if he throws a pass over 10 yards, you get 11-1. You can bet it right there on the spot. That's the future of sports. The other thing from a broadcasting standpoint is I think you could have games on Instagram, games on Snapchat, games on TikTok. I don't know, but it's going to look different than it looks now. I know that's way far out. As far as the NFL is concerned and the Washington team, you know, what really pisses me off about that is just the hypocrisy. You know, Roger Goodell, Dan Snyder, you know, Colin Kaepernick was basically not basically, he was blackballed.
He was blackballed. Yes, he was.
He was blackballed. And these, you know, tightwad suits only moved when they had to. So Dan Snyder would have held on to the Redskins as long as he could. As long as the revenue was coming in from the advertisers, he was going to hang on as long as he could. Same thing with Goodell. He couldn't hold the dam back anymore, so he gave in. But they're phony. They're full of shit. And you know, it disappoints me. It really does disappoint me a lot that it took Breonna Taylor. It took, you know, all these other things that have happened. You know, I'm happy that it's happening. I'm happy there's a movement. I'm happy that it seems real, that, you know, NBA players are in NBA finals now, or you know, with names on their jerseys, or you've got football games.
Well, this really has been brought forward by sports, right? Like, you could talk about rappers, you could talk about people in the streets leading, and all of that's happening, right? I mean, you know, everything about woke and Black Lives Matter, which I talk about here all day long and have been, really the inspiration for all of this probably happened in the aftermath of Freddie Gray and what happened to our community, and then Donald Trump getting elected, which has greatly affected Baltimore, which is why I've moved to Baltimore Positive, because I think the future is in local and the future is in community, but certainly the future is in diversity, and we're going to find that out in 30 days. You know, I don't keep my election ballot far, so just so you know, I keep it right here just to let everybody know, you know, where I am on that. But I mean, I couldn't agree with you more that the sports part of this is really where it's being led in front of the people who need to see it the most, right? And that would be the sports fan in the upper deck who is with the SOBs and Donald Trump back in Wembley. And we're talking 3 years and a little bit of change ago, right? That how much the mindset of the public is moved. And, it's kind of reminiscent of maybe where the mindset is moved on gay marriage or on marijuana or on Roe versus Wade or all of these progressive issues over the last 30 or 40 years where the teenager version of you and me might not recognize the government or what we're doing right now, but we're doing it in the right way. That this is, 1968 kind of all over again. But we were in the middle of an election and a plague, and we have to throw that onto it. But sports is out in front of all of this. I don't think there's any question about that.
Well, and I think that's the silver lining, right? The silver lining is that the owners can no longer stand in the way of the players. They can no longer put their agenda up against their agenda. And now you can have a voice, you can be heard, and the impact that has is gonna transcend. It's gonna make a really big difference. And I think that we're finally at a point, Nestor, where I think there's going to be much more equality, diversity and inclusion and all that stuff. I think this has legs now. I think we finally get to a world where everybody's seen the same. There's always going to be a degree of prejudice in everything, in politics and in life, in whatever. But I think this is the best place we've been at, in terms of a country, as far as hope, as far as breathing eternal, longer term hope. In the past, we've had these things happen, Freddie Gray, whatever. I mean, you go all the way back to Rodney King and, a million things that have happened along the way, but it's always just been a small moment. Oh, I'm so sorry. We've got to do something about it. Now you actually see people tripping over themselves to be kind of first to market in making an impact. So I think there'll be a big change there.
I've been a big thoughts and prayers guy, but I'm more about voting at this point, right? Like, so,
I have a feeling I know what's in there. I think I know which way you're going.
Yeah, it's not orange. I promise you that. Greg Sher's here, NFM Lending. You can find him out there doing good things. And there is life after WBAL, and I guess even life after sports for some people in killing time and doing things in other ways. I mean, 6 months without sports, right, Greg? I mean, for what I did for a living, there was no thought, well, maybe one day there won't be a season because there'll be a plague, or Maryland will be number 7 in the country and there won't be a March Madness, or the lacrosse season won't happen, or baseball won't start on time. Yet here we are in October, bro, and let's see, we got a Stanley Cup champion. We're going to have an NBA champion. Baseball looks like they bubbled this thing off, and they're going to run off to Texas and play next week and have a World Series. Football in the middle of a pandemic, going into maybe the worst part of the pandemic, the second year here, flu season as well, as the president pointed out this morning on Twitter. I don't know whether football's going to get to the end of this. I saw some people in the stands the other night, and some of these places. Dick Cass is trying to bring people here, but it's fascinating to me that the Ravens are really good. 12-4, 13-3, whatever they're going to be. They win some games in January, but we could play a Super Bowl in Tampa that nobody can even go to. And getting back to the Super Bowl parade, which is the greatest thing ever. You can't even have a parade. There's nobody to high five. It's been a very weird. I mean, maybe you're gambling, Greg, but I mean, from a fan standpoint of having no one to high five and sitting in empty stadiums, as I've done in Houston and in Raljon the last 2 out of 4 weeks, I love the game and it's great on television, but there is something missing, man, for sure.
Well, what's missing, Nestor, the biggest impact. First of all, I'm a big fantasy football guy. I'm in 5 or 6 leagues. So for the longest time, and I had Raven season tickets from day one. I think I sat in the seats maybe 7 times. All the other times I gave to employees or connections or people just to make their day. So I love sitting on the couch watching the NFL Red Zone.
That is the way you experience football.
That's the way I experience. But the biggest difference is the lack of crowd noise. Basically, every field is a neutral field. And as we all know, the crowd can really impact games. So to me, there's a huge asterisk to this season because you don't get the true experience when you're on the road. You're basically, look at what the Chiefs did to the Ravens. Now the Chiefs do that to the Ravens all the time because they've got their number, but which is a different topic, which I'd like to get into because I'll tell you that if I was on the radio today, and I'm still passionate about certain things, what I'd be saying is that I don't have faith that Lamar Jackson can lead this team, to a Super Bowl victory. And not that that's the end all be all, but I see a lot of limitations and a lot of red flags. And, that's not a popular thing for sure. But when I look at how he's shown up in big games or not shown up, when I look at, the record in the playoffs, the way he looks on the big stage, there's just something really off there. And I feel like the window is not huge for him because of this style of play. I don't think he's going to last in the league 10 years without a major injury unless something changes about his game. So to me, he's got a very small window, and I'm not seeing a lot of improvement. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, well, 21-1 against all these teams. None of that matters. What matters is how you play in the playoffs. What matters is how you play against the elite teams. And so far, he has shrunk on that stage. And so if I was, you can see I'm still passionate about it, right? If I was still on BAL, I'd make the comment.
The defense of him would be he's 18 months in and he has gotten better. But I would say after the Kansas City game, I share your concern for his comportment when the team's behind. I see no evidence. There are people that are great winners and great playing on the winning team and when they're ahead. And he's a great player. And the fact that they get a lead 15 out of 16 weeks is awesome, right? But the week that you don't have the lead and you have to come back from 13, there's a certain thing that Flacco had, quite frankly, that he was always criticized about, which you could never look at Joe Flacco on the bench and know the score, ever. Winning or losing, right? That was Joe's style. It was the way his father trained him to be. It was the way his mind, like Stillwater, that's the way he ran. And there are people that run off of passion. I mean, look at Phillip Rivers, who looks weird running around in that Colts helmet, right? Like, his whole thing is screaming at teammates and demonstrative and, showing up teammates and stuff that he's been doing for 2 decades, quite frankly, that's worked for him, right? So, Troy Aikman was the quiet guy, right? So everybody's got a different way. But the thing that happens when things are going bad, when you're a leader, there is a comportment to bring your team back. And he hasn't done it yet. And I don't know where that corner turns for him, but it probably turns when he stops beating on the ground and showing the body language of someone it's going to make it harder. This is the 52-year-old guy with the great temples, the Tony Robbins in me. You make it harder on yourself when that's where your mind is. You know what I mean?
I think there's more to it than that, though.
Yes.
I don't see that, Nestor.
Go ahead.
I don't see that. I see a lack of poise in those moments. I see a nervousness. It just feels disjointed to me.
Well, that's me. Calm. I mean, there's a calm about.
Though, bro. It's more than that. It's
okay.
Not just calm. It's having the poise. It's having the ability. Quite frankly, I mean, I know he's got mounds of ability in certain ways, but to me, when you're a run-first offense, and his accuracy is terrible in a lot of instances. I mean, he's in this last game against the Chiefs. It was really disappointing to me. He missed a couple of wide open guys. Okay, wide open. I mean, Marquise Brown, streaking down the sidelines. He didn't hit him. He was wide open. So, but you don't see. This is what disappoints.
But that doesn't mean he's incapable of making that pass. So I'm not. Because I've seen him make that pass, and they've seen him make that pass. So they know he can make that pass. Will he make that pass in January? Until he does, beating the Redskins, whatever you call it, the Washington football team doesn't matter, right? It won't matter beating Cincinnati this week.
Well, just putting a period on that sentence. That happened with Brown. He had a couple other guys he missed. Andrews on a deflection drops a ball, and his body language, just the way he looks, the way he shows up to his teammates in what I consider to be a limited window, as I told you, to me, that's just another component. It's accuracy, it's maturity, it's poise, it's confidence, it's style. All these things, when you add them all up to me, tell me, after watching football 20-some years very closely, it's a long shot that he's ever going to get them to a Super Bowl.
The issue is when you fall behind for whatever reason, interceptions, stalled offense, defense is no good, kickers missing kick, whatever it is, when you fall behind, the ability to come back in a 2-minute offense, I need to see him run it, right? Like, to your point, when you're winning 45-6 because you're so good at doing it, right? You don't find that out till you're down 10 points to Tennessee at home in January, and then you have to find that. And
right.
If it's a tool you've never used because your driver's so good, you don't have to worry about whatever it is. You got one part of your game that's so good that you don't have to worry about the other part of your game. the 2-minute offense is something they're going to be looking at and saying, can we score quickly without having to run? Is there a way for us to do that and be a passing team in a 2-minute offense? That's never going to be their strong point, right? And they haven't been in it enough to execute it often enough. They haven't been losing very much, Greg. You know what I mean? That's part of not knowing being good at losing. When you don't lose much, you're not good at it, right?
Yeah, well, it's a watered down league in a lot of ways. There's a certain number of really good teams and big stages, and then there's, to me, they're the elite among, they're at the very top of mostly everybody. And then there's this other level here where the pressure gets ratcheted up, and you've got to play the teams that are focused and motivated and very well coached.
Well, that's where you see the Josh Allens and
exactly.
Deshaun Watson. His coach just got fired, right? They're 0-4. So they have a quarterback. They don't have much of anything else. Cincinnati's coming in this week. If you're asking me right now to bet $1 on or against Joe Burrow, I'll take the $1 on him at this point. I think he's more maybe than maybe not, certainly, right? So Baker Mayfield, I'm not sold on him. And Roethlisberger, I know at least he's 1 foot out the door. He's not going to be here forever for the next 5 years. But for all of these young quarterbacks, where Mahomes sits is the holy grail they're chasing, right? What that kid has done, it's making it a lot harder to compare Lamar Jackson to him, because what we're seeing from him is sort of the next version of Brady, quite frankly.
They've got a lot of skills. They've got a lot of skilled players, Nestor. And when I go back and look at the legacy of the Ravens, I have a hard time finding any good receivers that they drafted. And they've been in town now 24 years. When I look at their leaderboard and I see guys like Derek Mason at the top, Michael Jackson in the top 10, where have the great receivers been? Mahomes has got great receivers that have been drafted by Kansas City. They also have a very complex offense that for some reason the Ravens seem way confused on. All the misdirection, all the movement, for whatever reason, that really throws them off. And Andy Reid's got a very dynamic offensive look to him. There's a lot of movement, a lot of motion. You really got to be on your game, and for some reason that really throws them off. But getting back to the skill position again, Todd Heap is one of the best receivers they've ever drafted. But again, he's a tight end. So is Ozzie, right? So do you think that's a problem when you look at the wide receiver position? What has happened to the Ravens over all these years, and why haven't they been able to grab elite receivers out of the draft?
Well, they're not built that way now, right? They're not built to throw the ball 45 times a game.
This is 20 plus years we're talking about, though. I'm talking about over 2 decades.
There's no doubt they haven't been good at that. And the Steelers have been exemplary at that. But the Ravens have been good at drafting at other positions. But, yeah, the wide receiver position, you could go back to Joe Flacco and look at where they missed having spent all the money on him. But part of this is having a rookie contract on your quarterback as well to save money. The Marshall Yanda departure, they miss Marshall Yanda. There's no doubt about that. And when you take a Hall of Famer out of a running game like that, Ronnie Stanley didn't play last weekend, they will miss those kind of players. And they don't have enough money to pay everybody, right? So Lamar's going to get his money on the back end of Marlon getting his money. Then the question is, where are you willing to play with a rookie? Where are you willing to go short? And certainly from the wide receiver position, none of these wide receivers are going to get paid because they're not in an offense that's going to get them paid, right? This is never going to be that kind of an offense for them. And I wouldn't – if Hollywood turns out to be something special, and I think he might be in this offense, I still wouldn't see him being a guy that would get the Antonio Brown money down the line, because this offense would never show that. This offense is never going to get the ball to Hollywood Brown 14 times a game. I
agree. You think that Lamar Jackson needs to become a pocket passer at any point, or it just is what it is?
No, I don't think he can. I think you're asking him to do something that he doesn't do. And it makes me nervous as hell that he seeks out contact in the third quarter with a 3-touchdown lead, right? This is very unconventional what they've tried to do. We're a couple of years into the experiment. I'm not here to urinate upon it. They're 3-1. They beat most teams most weeks. When they have a lead, they have the kind of running game you don't want to see with the lead. I mean, you know what their game plan is. Third quarter, they bear Gus Edwards down on you. Fourth quarter, they run Ingram and Gus and whatever's left of Dobbins at you. That's going to be the way they get to 12 or 13 this year. And they're going to get there probably because they're not going to play enough good teams. But against the team where they're down 10 points or 13 points, I'm with you. What does Greg Roman do? What happens on those options? In the Chargers game 2 years ago, Lamar thought, I have to run. I agree. That was skittish for me. The Tennessee game, I'm not ready to throw him completely under the bus because I thought, by and large, they none of them played well. His passing was not good in that game. The Kansas City game last week, yeah, they're just not as good a team as them at this point on either side of the ball, and they got behind. And when they get behind, that's not their profile because they don't throw the ball like that. They're not going to come out in the second half and throw the ball 32 times because they're down 13 points and have some level of success. I don't believe that. I think they need to use the clock and run the ball, whether they're ahead or behind, and this goes into the head of all of them to not know the score. You know, when you're sitting on the bench and you're down 13 points, you know the score. And that has changed the way they've played when they've been behind.
I think there's not enough credit given to the fact, you know, one side of the argument is he's only been a starting quarterback for 18 games. That's one side of the argument, right?
That's a fair side.
Okay. All right. Well, let me give you another side. The other side is there's enough game tape right now for teams to see in terms of how to stop them and how to approach the Ravens. So that's the equalizer.
And then you have to have the players to do it.
I hear you. Other teams are looking at it. I mean, would you have ever thought that the Chargers would have been able to beat the Ravens in the first round? Would you ever thought that Tennessee would be able to hit them in the mouth like that in that playoff game? I mean, you could talk about the Chiefs and how great they are, but the Chiefs are beatable. Did you see them last night against the Patriots? They certainly looked human to me. Are the Patriots that much better than the Ravens? Are they even better than the Ravens? How are they able to do that? How are they? Because they've got the best coach ever? I don't know. But, you know, they were in Kansas City, and even despite the score, that was a very close game. That first half, I thought the Patriots, they had the upper hand on the Chiefs. Now they had Hoyer in there who sucks, and he made some huge mistakes that you wouldn't expect to come from a guy in terms of ball protection and what to do on, you know,
well, they're not going to win with those quarterbacks, right? They might win.
Well, they could have won that game,
but they're not going to win.
But my point is, look at how the Chiefs dominated the Ravens, and look at how the Patriots played the Chiefs. So are the Chiefs really that great? I mean, I guess they are. We'll find out.
The Ravens won't get a chance to show if they're great until they play better teams. And that's certainly not going to happen this week. It'll happen after the bye against the Steelers. We'll see the Eagles next week. Greg, I want to let you give one more plug for what you do at NFM and tell everybody how to find you. Greg Sher, longtime WBAL sports director is what they call it there. Okay, I'll make sure I get the right
I gave myself the title. I don't think I was seasoned enough to ever really get it, but that's what I call myself. So I was.
That's fine. I'll accept it. I'm not going to look you up or look up your report card. By the way, I'm doing a whole series this month on all my teachers. It's National Teachers Week or Day was earlier this week. So all of the teachers of my lifetime are going to come on. And I actually found some of the report cards, so they got some explaining to do. Or maybe I do.
So
what are you doing at NFM, man?
I'm at NFM. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer, and I help the company grow. We're Baltimore-based. We're actually the largest mortgage lender in the state of Maryland. We employ around 900 people now, and we're top 25 in the country. So we'll do over $10 billion in residential loans in 2020.
All right. Well, I got a guy. If I need a guy, Greg's the guy. Greg, always good to visit with you, man. It's great seeing you online over the weekend, and I'm glad we got to spend some time together. Nothing more Baltimore positive than you and me getting together, right?
Yeah. As always, my love and prayers and continued health to your beautiful wife.
Appreciate you, man. And you will have the best Zoom background of any Zoom background that we've ever had here.
I feel like, it doesn't really work, though. You got, it's part of the time, looks like I've got shoulder pads on. It's, as you pointed out, the lighting's not great. If there is a next time, I will make sure the lighting is better.
I feel like Tony Linhart's going to kick you in the back of the head is what I think there. So shout out to Tony Linhart, who I loved. Greg Sher joining us here, NFM Lending, and a longtime pal of mine and a Derby aficionado. And he's the one guy that knows the Preakness ran last weekend. The rest of us, we're still waiting. Nasty at WNST.net still finds me. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and Instagram. I'm still drinking out of my Pizza John's cup and drinking my Kona Blend Royal Farms coffee and picking up those chicken tenders I love so much, as well as pimping our friends at Taharka. I got our friends from Taharka on talking about the pink truck and where they take that this week, bringing you the chocolate love, or my favorite, of course, the honey graham. Vote. I've got my official ballot inside. I'm holding it for everyone. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Taos and Baltimore, merging the streams of sports and Baltimore positive.